Let's move on to the Microsoft Work Trend Index annual report. This is one I mentioned before. A couple weeks ago, I was talking about agent bosses. This is kind of the big move. Everybody's going to be an agent boss in 2020, whatever. And if you listen to my update on the 10 predictions, after I recorded it, I thought about it and I was like, I didn't say anything about agents. And in some ways, I actually think that's probably okay. I think agents are still, yes, people are playing with them and implementing them, but it's still very early on the curve. So even if I had added it, I would have put it on my category 3 of like things to keep on your radar. But I think the average person's not really messing with them. So I wanted to do a deeper dive. So I spent some time digging into it. You can check it out. You can look up 2025 Microsoft Work Trend and Index, and you'll find this whole report. There were some things in particular that I wanted to focus on. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but there were some really interesting insights that pulled out of it that I think are things we should be conscious and aware of, because I think they're showing some misses that we're making as it comes to AI. Now, one of the ones was highlighted by this whole, you'll see this circle graph, and it talks about how is AI being used, or where are people leaning into this, and or why are people looking to agents? Why are they looking forward to, and whether it's agents or just AI in general, I think sometimes people are using those synonymously. But one of the biggest things is 80% of the workforce feels they don't have time. Okay, 4 in 5 people are going, I don't have time to do my work. That's concerning in and of itself. When 80% of people are going, there are not enough hours in the day to, get the work done, that's problematic. But what it does, it now stack on top of this, over half of leaders, was 53% or something like that, leaders said, we need more out of people. Okay, so 80% don't have time to do what they do. More than half of leaders are saying, well, we need people to do more. They need to be more productive. They need to be producing more. So, and this is what the report seems to highlight, which I think it's a logical conclusion. It's the wrong conclusion. The logical conclusion I see so many companies leaning into with this is, and that's where AI comes in. That's what agents do. People don't have enough time. We need to get more out of them. We bring AI into the mix, and ta-da, we have added productivity and added work that gets done. And when you looked at the numbers, that's what 82% of leaders thought. They said this is the solution. So 80% of people, too much, I don't have time. More than half of leaders go, we need more. 82% of leaders go, AI is the solution. All right, this is the line of thinking that's happening. And I understand where that comes from. We are in a culture, in an environment right now that is just like, go, 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 go. We just need to go faster. We need to do more. We need to run at a higher rate of speed. We need to accomplish. And it's like, okay, how do you know that though? And this is honestly one of the, whether you ever work with me, if you want, you can call me and I can come help with some of this stuff. Whether you do or not, one of the most important questions I always ask when I get brought into some of this stuff, Christopher, because I'm in these conversations, Christopher, we don't have enough time. We need to get more done. We think AI is the solution. How do we make that happen? My first question is always, how do you know you need to get more done? And I'll be honest, usually it's met with a little bit of a deer in headlights stare, like, is that really your question back to us? How can you even question that? And I always have to kind of like, I always end up like going, well, listen, I'm not saying you don't. I'm saying, how do you know? How do you know for sure that the things you're doing are adding value and you need to do more of them? And it does lead to these conversations of, usually, I'll just tell you the process. Usually there's resistance, there's defensiveness, because of course people are like, how dare you challenge the idea that doing more of what we're doing isn't the right path? And usually I can, we can walk people back from that and just go, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, how do we know? How do we know the things we're doing are adding value? How do we know that if we do more of those things, we will add more value? How do we know if the effort that's required to do more of those things with what we have is actually going to net a return that's greater than the investment? How do we know we're not going to get to the other side and say, we've invested $10 million on AI and upskilling and all this other stuff, and now people are churning out more of the same crap they were before, and that gave us a 5% lift, which comes out to about $100,000 in added revenue, but we spent $10 million on it. How do you know that's not where you are? And as I start pushing through that, suddenly people start recognizing, oh, okay, you're not saying we don't do it. You're saying, let's just make sure we have a pulse on how do we know this? And what is often at the core of this is that they don't know. And that's almost always where we begin spending some time is, let's at least validate these things. Let's at least validate that, okay, if 4 out of 5 employees don't have enough time to get their work done, could we maybe solve that by getting rid of some of their work? And I know the initial reaction a lot of times is like, absolutely not. What everybody's doing is so important. But is it though? How do we know it's important? And oftentimes, some of the first exercises I can do can take that 80% down to 40%. Less than 30% of people are going, I don't have time. Because when you start working on the right things, suddenly people start realizing, hey, I have more capacity to get the right things done. I just didn't have capacity to get done all the noise on top of the right things. So taking the time to slow that down is actually really important. And I think this risk right here actually highlights a major risk in organizations. There is just this natural assumption that people don't have enough time and we need to get more done, so we need AI to do it. And I think that is going to result in a lot of companies spending a lot of money, a lot of time, and adding a lot more stress to people that is not going to net a return. I think it's going to net a loss. And so I would encourage everyone to slow down and not say, no, we're not going to, but actually say, hey, how do we check? How do we make sure? How do we look at what's actually being done and decide, is all of this actually critical? And not just based on gut feels or based on high level assumptions, but like, let's actually dig into it and make sure before we move forward, so that you're investing in AI, investing in change in the right things, not just because it's a thing, because it's not free. That's the other thing. People think like, oh, we just implement AI and it's free. It's not free. Not only does the tech cost money, but the upskilling, the resources that go along with it, like all this stuff costs money and time and energy. And you just need to be surgical about it. You can't just carpet bomb this into an organization. I think something else that came out in the report that I think more companies just need to be open, and I think people are getting a sense of this. Yes, companies are saying they want to use a lot of resources for upskilling, but also a lot of effort is going to reduction in headcount. They're looking at how do we trim headcount? How do we get rid of people? Which I said this in a post this week it was 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago. Anyway, we got to be really careful about this. As we continue growing our workforce with AI, we forget we're funneling more and more of our dollars to an entity that is incapable of adding back into the economic system. And so, when we take money from people, whether that's by not giving them raises or bonuses or whatever, or eliminating employees and laying them off, so now they're unemployed, and channeling that money over to AI, we got to remember AI can't buy products. It's not interested in services. It doesn't have time for entertainment or leisure. And so it can't add back into the system. And so you're going to have people who just don't have money to even buy the products. And it's a slow erosion of our economic system, but it's one I'm seeing happen a lot, where at some point people aren't going to have money to buy this stuff. You're going to have all these fancy AI tools doing all this stuff, and nobody's going to be able to even purchase it or do anything with it. And it's going to pop at some point. I have a good friend who's an economist, and we were talking about this the other day. We're like, this AI bubble will pop because it's just eating up all of these resources and dollars. And I mean, just it's eating up everything and it can't do anything for us. And we're going to feel that. Now, I think one of the things that was good from this report that I think we'll see is one of the things it did spend some time on is breaking down, how do we dial into the right human to agent ratio? Now, to be clear, I hope everybody at this point knows I don't oppose AI agents. I'm not opposed to AI. I actually think it's great. I think we should use it wisely. I think we need to use it surgically, which is why I really love this second point about dialing into the human agent ratio and making sure we understand, hey, if we're going to do agents, there can't be too few or it's a waste. You're going to invest all this time and energy spinning up agents, but there's not enough people to oversee what they're doing. A good example I have is of someone I know who's a developer, and their company has created all these agents just churning out code that's now going to the remaining developers to approve. And his queue of stuff to approve, it's too, he can't even keep up with it. So there's too many agents for the number of like it's just spinning up too much stuff and he can't tap into it. Now, on the flip side, there can be too few where it's like, well, this isn't even really helping. So we're in this state of like, what is the right number of agents? What should those agents be doing? I actually think this work is actually going to be really helpful because it's going to actually contribute to some of the deconstruction that needs to happen of work so that we can understand, hey, what needs to be done? How does it need to be done? When does it need to be done? So we can make sure we're doing it the right way. But I think we need to slow down and take the time to do that. My concern around the dialing the human agent ratio is I'm not seeing a lot of that. I'm just seeing we turned it on and we're trusting people to figure that out. And that's why I have the AI effectiveness rating, because we're handing over agent creation to people who many don't even know what that means. And that came out really clear in some of the data of like, do you even know what an agent is? And many people were like, no, I don't know what that is, or I couldn't describe it or figure out where it fits in. So we just got to be really careful with that. But I am excited and would encourage organizations that if you are exploring agents, take the time to understand where, when, how many you actually need and where they fit into the mix to get a better result. Again, it's this surgical, strategic thinking around the use of AI instead of, hey, great, agents can, people not enough time, need more productivity, therefore AI agents fix. That's a very caveman-esque approach to agental AI. Now, something related to that, though, was, if you jump to section 3, and then I'll go back to some of the things I think we're seeing with people with it, is, it went into like this idea of the mindset of people. Where are they at with agents and how do they feel about it? And you can see there is a pretty steep divide between leaders and employees. And I think that is actually a concerning gap that we need to close, because we have decision makers who have, and there's numbers are still pretty low, but they kind of have more comfort and familiarity with it. And they're the ones who are moving forward with some of this stuff. Their people really aren't even aware or, know how it works. And again, this puts you at risk of a person making a decision about how you're going to use AI who doesn't really understand your job. And so I think to leaders, I would say, make sure you're inviting your people in, you're bringing them along for this ride. You're not just buying the marketing hype that these things are going to be great and enough about it to tell your people where AI is going to fit or how many agents they need or what their agents are going to be doing. Invite your people along for the ride so that they understand it. We need to close this gap where 70% of leaders know what an agent is and 40% of employees do. That should be like neck and neck, and it should be higher, but it should be neck and neck. Some of these other things, just again, don't operate off assumptions. But then to the employees, now is a really good time to recognize AI does belong alongside you. It just belongs alongside you in the right ways. And you are the best person to figure out, hey, where are there things that are good for AI to take care of? And where are there things that you go, no, this would not be a good place for that, so that you can work with your boss. You can work with your leaders on how to do this well. so that you don't end up like my friend who found themselves suddenly discovering, oh, turns out my job is approving AI coding tickets. Great. That's not what I would have recommended as a path. Well, I told him a long time ago, you need to get in front of this and start showing people how, or at some point, this is what's going to happen. And so just be really, really conscious of that. I think it's this working together. Leaders, you're the ones who are in the ability to make the decisions. Employees, you're the ones who are close enough to know where and how and when to do it. And so you've got to team up and do this. Now, one of the big concerns that I saw with this, well, two that really stood out to me was one metric in here was trusting AI for high stakes work. Okay, when I looked at one of the stats on here, 80% of leaders trust AI to do high stakes work. Now, that's really problematic when you consider the fact that leaders often don't understand the depth of the high stakes work and they already trust it. And so that's concerning in and of itself. But then employees weren't that far behind. They were like 65%, 66 or something like that, 66. So even employees are at this point of, yeah, we can trust AI to do this high stakes work. This is extremely problematic when you compare it to the Apple research that says when it comes to crisis situations, high levels of complexity, things like that, AI fails. It does not perform well. It sounds like it performs well. It's extremely confident in what it does, but it doesn't actually produce a good result. And so the fact already on the comfort curve, we have jumped up to, yeah, I'm pretty sure it'll do a great job. What? The data doesn't support that. The data says the opposite. I continue getting pulled into crisis situations where people have handed things over to AI only to have it blow up in their face. And so I was really concerned to see how high the trust level is in AI to do the high stakes, high complexity work. Now, I'm not ringing the alarm bell saying this is, doom and gloom, apocalypse is upon us. No, but I am saying we got to be a little more careful here because the data just does not support it. And I'll tie this to my next point about GPT-5. I think the other thing that was really interesting, though, in this, and then I'll probably wrap here, was, well, I got one more thing, was, going back to my original point, everybody said one of the biggest problems, 4 out of 5 people, 4.5 out of 5 people said they don't have enough time. There's not enough time in a day. When it came to saving 1 hour a day with AI, is AI giving you back an hour? Leaders were less than a third. Employees were at less than 20, or we're at 20%, 1 in 5. So I want to illustrate this point that people are going into AI because they go, we don't have enough time to do things, but we need to do more. So we're going to get AI to help. And what's coming out of this is AI is not helping us with our time situation. And then the data is showing it's not actually improving outcomes. Now, to be crystal clear, that's not me saying AI is, all hype, it's all smoke and mirrors, it's not actually capable. I think it's capable. I think what this data is revealing is how poor of a job we're doing with AI. I think that's the takeaway everybody can walk away from right now is report after report after report after report continues to show we're not doing a good job. So we need to do something different. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. We can't keep pursuing AI the way we are pursuing it and hope that at some point we're going to get to a model that magically picks up the pieces, that closes the gap, that at some point people are just going to magically be good with AI and it's all going to get fixed. We've got to think differently about it. We've got to slow down. We've got to deconstruct. We've got to figure out, hey, are we working on the right things? We've got to identify how capable are the people we're asking to use AI. That is why I have created the tools that I have to help organizations with this, because what we're doing right now is not working. And the technology is not going to fix that. And so, whether you're an employee, whether you're a leader, whether you're a business owner, please hear that, because if we keep going down the path we're going to just make bigger and bigger and bigger messes that are harder and harder and harder to clean up.